Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first live stream for the Read with Rhys book club. This is Nikki Rhys.
Oh no, I've been saying it Rhys.
Totally fair.
Oops. At least mentally saying it Rhys. It seems we don't have anyone here, which I'm not super surprised about, right? Unless I'm just not seeing them.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anybody just yet.
That's okay. That's okay. We only need two people to have a conversation.
That is true.
I was also thinking there's a high chance that we would have some technical difficulties. So I was kind of worried that if we did have people, that it would be a bit, would be black screen fumbling around. So it's probably for the best.
Yeah, you never really know. When you're
It's not
trying to
that
do...
people don't like us, it's that we didn't want them here. Oh, there's one person here. Gray
I think it
dot.
was me. I was checking to make sure it was working.
Oh. Okay, I got excited and the excitement's gone. All right, let's ignore it. Pretend that never happened. Okay. So should we do, since it's the first live stream, should we do introductions?
Kelly's
Kelly.
here.
I knew Kelly would come. I figured Kelly would come just to see the train wreck in real time.
Thank you guys for joining. We're talking about Save the Cat by Jessica Brody. In the comments, let us know if you're a planter, planner. What's your style?
Nikki, what's your style?
Well, I've kind of a little bit of both. I'm more of a pantser, but in the sense that like I kind of sit with a story for a really long time, and so I'll just kind of get ideas over time and add them. But I don't really outline. But after reading this book, it's definitely, I think, given me some tools to work on being better at planning because it's hard.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, I see that Gray Dot's name is Debbie. So
Hi,
we've got
Debbie.
Debbie and Kelly. We've got two humans.
Yeah.
And yeah, feel free to say in the chat if you're a pantser or plotter. I think it's a bit of a false dichotomy. I don't think anyone is fully one way or the other way, but I think, I don't know, I think that for me, I'm a bit more on the pantser, I like discovery writer side, if you've heard that term. And so I think that for me, I do try to outline. I try to do I try to do the beats, which we'll talk about, I guess, with the book. But I just really felt that with that method, it's very disconnected. So I was putting in like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if they do this thing? Wouldn't it be cool if they do that thing? And then all of a sudden I've got this really long book that's just kind of moving from spot to spot and not very coherent. So what I've started doing instead is writing like more of a causal, like this thing happens, and then because of that, this other thing happens. And then because of that, this other thing happens. So it's kind of like a causal chain, but it hasn't worked that well, to be honest. It's still, when I go to write it, it doesn't turn out like the outline. And I realize like I missed a lot of things, or the characters, it doesn't suit the characters, or I added too much, or I didn't add enough. So anyways,
I really like the term that George R. R. Martin uses. He calls himself a gardener, because I feel like that almost touches on what you were talking about, where it's about a causal relationship, and it's about letting things develop as they happen in a organic kind of way. And I see Kelly's comment here. Reformed pantser reluctantly turned plotter. I love that. I think that's a lot of us.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually have a good example of this, or this is my theory. You can tell me if it's wrong or if it's right. But so basically, I've been doing, as you know, been doing a lot of dance classes. So tango. I'm in Argentina, hence the mate. That's
Vibes.
what this is. It's not like my friend asked if it was drugs. I was like, no, it's tea. So anyway, so we've been doing a lot of dance classes, and so at the salsa class, there's this guy. I don't want to call him out, but there's this older gentleman, middle-aged gentleman, and we can just call him Randy. I actually don't know his name. So Randy is there every single week, and he's like dancing around, and he's like convinced that he's the best dancer ever. And I don't tell him that I speak English because I don't want to talk to him. So I just pretend that I'm Spanish or I speak Spanish. And, you know, in Argentina, there's like lots of blonde Argentinians. So it's like, I can be like incognito. And every time I talk to him, he's like dancing and he's just doing it totally wrong. He's like moving, but it's just wrong. And he's not doing the spins right. And then he'll just keep saying, muy fácil, which just means like very easy. And I'm like, yeah, it's easy. Everything's easy when you're just making stuff up. Like, it's muy fácil. But then, and he's like bopping around the dance floor, like, muy fácil. And then it's just really frustrating because he doesn't know the steps, so it's hard to follow him. He's not doing what the teacher is actually saying or showing. And he just kind of looks like an idiot, and he's like stepping on people's toes. And then, so there's Randy. And I think that's the beginner phase where you just want to bop around on the dance floor. Mm-hmm. And then there's kind of the second phase. And I think that's what me and my husband are kind of in, where we're like, not bopping. We're just like, teach us the steps. Like, where do we step? What is the step? And then they're just like, 1, 2, 3. And you do the steps, but it looks very kind of robotic.
Uh-huh.
And, and the teacher's shouting at us, like, feel the music, feel the salsa. And my husband's Chinese and English. So he's just like, so I'm Chinese and I'm English. I don't feel the music. I don't have the blood to feel the music. So just teach me the steps. Like, just show me what to do. And then, so we're kind of like robots, following the steps, but it doesn't really follow the music. It doesn't feel very graceful. It's just the steps. And then there's the third phase, which is the kind of next level, like the people who are really good. So they know the steps, but now they're bopping. Like, they have their own style, they have their own grace. They're not following the steps precisely, but they have the steps so ingrained that when they move, it's just natural. And they know how to do the turns, and the rhythm is right. They have their own personal flair. So all these things are going on, but they do it so effortlessly. So I think those are like the 3 phases. And I think for writing, there's the first phase, which is the Randy bopping phase, where you're just writing and you're like, wouldn't it be cool if they find this magic carpet and now they find this other thing and then they get murdered? I don't know. So you're just like bopping, and it's a bit of a mess, but it's fun, and you think, oh, this is great, I'm gonna go query it now. And then you get smashed down by all the like beta readers, agents. And then you're like, okay, I need to learn how to outline. I need to have structure. I need to fix this. And then you get to the robot phase where you're just like following the beat sheet down. And it's like, now they are here. Now they are there. Now we have our last moment, end. And then I think the third phase is this kind of more organic, where you're bopping and you have your own style, your own twist, but you are following the structure, kind of like it's in your blood, it's in your soul, and you're not like outlining maybe so precisely, but you do have a sense of where it's going. I think that's my kind of analogy of how it works. Obviously, I don't think I'm in the top tier of dancing. I'm not in the top tier of writing. I'm not in the top tier of pretty much anything. So I don't actually know what it's like, but I do think there is that kind of phase
Uh-huh.
And I think that being aware of the steps, you need to have that step where you learn the steps, where you learn how to outline, where you follow that really rigid structure.
Uh.
You need to know the rules to break the rules.
Yeah, and I so agree with that because, like, growing up when I was writing, I was totally in that first category. Writing came so easy to me. I would just, like, jot out whatever random stuff came to me, and I really enjoyed it. And then I went through all the rigor of, like, college and writing professionally, and, I think it definitely makes you start, like, overthinking things. And so it's almost harder to kind of get into that same flow that I used to.
Yes.
Yeah, and so I think with this book, Save the Cat and the Beat Sheet, it's kind of a nice guide in, traversing that middle step to work towards that 3rd step. So I think that that's really cool. I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, not to call out Randy for his dancing, but I really don't like Randy. And he's always like, when I don't do the turn right because he's doing it wrong, he's like, it's okay. It's stiffy sale. And I'm like, I'm gonna kill you.
The audacity.
Oh, he's swift. Anyways, I see Kelly said the piano lessons are similar. I think it's similar as well as like languages. I'm also learning Spanish and falling. Yeah, I'm on the bop. I'm not on. Oh, I was on the bop phase where I'm just like, muy fácil, buenos días, and now I'm like, oh, I'm an embarrassment. Um, and then Debbie also says, what does beta mean? Oh, a beta, like beta reader, is what you'll hear a lot of. I don't know. Nikki, do you have a definition on the top of your head?
Yeah, a beta reader is basically kind of like the writing version of when you're writing software for a computer. Beta testers will look at the software and try and find any bugs before it goes to the market. So a beta reader is basically just giving feedback on a book, so that the writer can make some changes and fine tune it before they either query it or publish it.
Yeah, that's a very good definition. I always just, yeah, I say something like someone who reads your book and gives you critiques, but I think yours is a lot better because there is that kind of, yeah, it's like a beta test,
uh,
testing the reader, testing, if there's any obvious flaws.
hmm.
It's good. Um, yeah, that was a bit of a tangent. I forget what we were going. I mean, we were talking about Save the Cat. Do you have any like specific questions that you wanted to
um,
pose?
I I thought it was interesting in the beginning of the book. Jessica says basically the novelists are competing with screenwriters, and I was interested how you felt about that. Do you think there's a real competition there, or because I honestly kind of feel like they each have their own space they operate in?
I mean, that's an interesting point. One thing I do think about books is that there's so many adaptations, of books like The
Uh,
Shadow and Bone,
uh,
Hunger Games, like
yeah.
Harry Potter. There's so many adaptations. And my opinion about it is that with books, it's very low cost, like the cost of
Mm.
producing one, besides your
Huh.
time
Yeah.
and your energy and your soul, but who cares about that? Whatever. There's It's very low cost, right? It only takes one person, and then most people have a computer anyways, and they have word
Mm,
processor anyways. And then maybe you get some, paid editor feedback or something at some
mm,
point. But for the most part, it's pretty much free. And then so you can develop this whole story. It can evolve.
mm,
Other people can give you feedback. You can make
mm.
this characters, these worlds. And then it's very well thought out because everything is pretty low cost. Whereas if you're hiring a studio to film
Mm.
something, all of a sudden the cost goes way up and you can't
Yeah.
really like
There's so many
develop it.
expenses and yeah.
Yeah, you've got staff, you've got technology, you've got the set,
Mhm,
and so all of a sudden the cost goes way up. So I feel that, um, everyone is always complaining about the adaptation kind of pipeline, But if you remember that, it's a film, it was called like Jupiter Rising or Jupiter Ascending.
Jupiter Ascending?
Yeah, it had the girl from that 70s show.
Yeah, Mila Kunis.
Yes, and that guy that's in Magic Mike, the stripper guy. Is that
Channing Tatum. Yeah.
Yeah, that guy. And so everyone was like, "Oh, it's the first like original non-adaptation type movie," and then it
Yeah.
totally flopped. And when I was watching it, I was just like, "Who who wrote this? Like, why is it so disjointed and like this is a mess? Like the script was a mess. It was very nicely produced, and the acting was good or whatever, but." I don't know. I just felt that the story wasn't very well developed. And then I think that that's kind of the pitfall of going straight to film, is that you don't have all the developed story. You don't have all that thought that's gone into it at a very low cost. Because like with a story, if you're writing a book, you can just change it, right? If you get halfway through and you're like, oh yeah, we lost the plot. Let's just delete it and start over. Zero cost besides time.
Yeah.
But with when you go straight to the screen, if you realize like a character's not working, the world doesn't really make sense, then all of a sudden, you can't really change it. So I feel that that's why there's that pipeline. So I think that, I don't know, I can see that like why that happens, because the cost is just so different, especially in fantasy or sci-fi or whatever.
Yeah, I see those flaws in the movie, but I honestly really love it.
Okay, I don't really remember it, to be honest.
Yeah.
It kind of like went over my head. I was like, I don't know, but I do remember it flopped. In
It
terms of the
definitely
box
didn't.
office.
Yeah. But yeah, I think when there's a book that something's based on, it really adds that depth and stuff. But then you also run the risk of kind of butchering something
that people already love and have an
and it's already
attachment to.
complete. And
Yeah.
but I do love that we get to get those visual imaginings of books, because I'm a very like visual person, and so I love watching it play out on screen. But yeah, there's been some really bad adaptations.
That's true. Yeah. It can go very wrong. And I think in some ways there's also this kind of cynical thing happening where filmmakers are like, oh, well, this one's already a success. We can just make money off of it because there's already this audience base. So, there's kind of that where it's a money grab. It's not really that they wanted to make it or feel passionate about it. So I think there's kind of this dual side to it. But I don't see it as I don't see it as like novel writers and screenwriters are like duking it out.
Yeah. Well, I feel like their audiences are they overlap, but they're different. There's people that like movies, there's people that like books, there's people that like both. So I feel like people are just going to gravitate to the medium that they enjoy anyways.
Yeah, that's true. I see Kelly left a comment about Marry Me with J-Lo. I heard this song. I got this song on one of my playlists. I think they're trying to promote it. And I got that song, Marry Me. I don't know who's the collab on it, but I just thought it was a very annoying, like lowbrow. It got put onto, I really like reggaeton. It's a mood that I'm in. So it was put on my reggaeton playlist, and I was just like, this is so bad. Like, this is such crap compared to what else is out there. And and then I figured, because it had kind of a movie poster title, and it seemed also like it was trying to be like a musical song. I don't know. It didn't appeal to me, but it's good that you liked it for the guilty pleasure aspect.
Sometimes you gotta, but yeah, I've been so inundated with ads for that movie.
Oh, really? I haven't had anything except that song infiltrating my playlist, and I'm just like, who is this?
It seems like every time I scroll on Twitter, it shows up.
Kelly says she likes it, but it's just that one song, the Marry Me song. It's not a good song. There's some good songs in this world, and that is not it. It's not it.
One thing that I really liked about Save the Cat is the focus on transformation, because I feel like that is such a core aspect to why we like stories so much as a human race.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, oh, well, I was going to give an example, but I don't want to give any like names or defining features. But when we were doing the reviewing the entries for the slush pile monster writing competition, I think there was one story, sci-fi story, and I think both of us were looking at it, and we both had this feeling that the characters, like, we just didn't connect with the character on an
Oh,
emotional level or feel that there
yeah.
was anything like relatable or like
Mm,
an arc that she was going to go on or anything. And I think even though the writing was good, the storytelling
mm,
was good, I think we both
mm,
passed on that entry for that reason.
mm,
I don't want to give any like defining because there weren't that many entries,
mm,
but I think it's just, yeah, there's just something, and it's hard to put your finger on because
yeah.
so much of it was good. But there is
Mhm.
just this one thing where it's like, I just don't really
Yeah.
see what growth or what arc or journey this character is
Mhm.
going to go on. So it's just hard to get invested in a story when you don't have that emotional
Yeah.
core to latch onto.
Hmm. And I honestly, one of the biggest things I took away from the beat sheet was the beginning section, because I think a lot of other writers too kind of want to start right at the catalyst. And I think it's just kind of the instinctual thing. It's what the big shiny event, and you want to capture people's attention, but really focusing on that setup and doing that character work to make you care when that catalyst happens, I think is so important, and I've been working on it in my work in progress that I'm working on.
Yeah, yeah, that's very true. Well, I think there's also this pressure put on the first chapter that's always like, it
Mhm.
has to grab people from the
Mhm.
first sentence, from the first page. So you want to have something that feels grabby,
Mhm.
that feels
Yeah.
exciting. And so then I think that's why you end up pushing
Mm.
the catalyst to that early stage because you want to really get people in. So
Mm.
yeah, it's this kind of difficulty about first chapters. I hate first chapters. I really hate first lines. If
Uh,
I think about it too much, then the book would never get written. I always just like put
I
some
think when you're
things
writing, it's very
down.
much just write what you can, and then you can always go back and fix things. I've been trying to get myself more in that mentality personally, because there's always that stress of, oh, it's not good enough. Oh, it's not good enough. Well, it's your first draft, so just finish it.
Yeah, just put something down and
Mm.
well, I always put something down and then I forget to change it. And then a beta reader will be like, what?
Uh,
Has your English become as bad as your Spanish? Or what's going on? Oh,
uh,
look, I think we've got some bots in the chat. Maybe a Russian bot. At least the
uh.
robots are interested.
Quality content approved by robots. There was
We
also,
must be doing something right.
yeah.
Transcends humanity.
We're making content for the future.
Yeah, when the robots enslave us all in the Matrix, we're gonna be like idols.
There was a really good quote in the book that I wrote down here. There's something buried deep within our DNA as humans that makes us respond to certain storytelling elements told in a certain order. I thought that was really interesting because you look back through history and there's so many fairy tales that are similar, and I think honestly that it kind of explains how tropes have developed. I feel like they're just so much in our psyche and feel universal sometimes. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that's true. And I think, yeah, I think there is this kind of like, yeah, certain types of stories really connect with people and really work. and it seems like people would get sick of that, but we don't. I don't know. There's just countless stories that have very similar. If you boiled it down to its very basic plot, it would be very similar or almost indistinguishable. I don't know, like Harry Potter is very similar. It's the thing. Remember when everyone was saying that Harry Potter's plot is like very similar to Luke Skywalker's plot?
Oh, I
He's
don't
like
know if I've heard that
orphan.
discourse, but
Okay, there was like, I don't know, someone was making YouTube videos about it. I don't know if it was a thing, but there are a lot of parallels if you look at it if you just boil it down to the basic structure, it's very similar. And there's a lot of other stories that are similar as well.
Yeah.
And I think it's, you would think that people get sick of it, but I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, I'm not really a Star Wars fan. That's kind of a controversial opinion, but I do know that Star Wars is very like fantasy-ish for a sci-fi series, and so that makes sense why it would have some similarities with a fantasy story for sure.
Definitely that kind of chosen one type. I don't fit in here. I'm an orphan. I need to go
Uh-huh.
find my family. Oh, it turns out I'm related to royalty and have
Uh,
magic power, like very special powers. So
yeah.
I think that is a very fantasy type trope, and the chosen one trope is very fantasy-esque.
Mm.
What was I going to say? There was another thought that I had about, the kind of stories. Yeah. Oh, speaking of story structures that just fall on their faces, was that I went to see The Matrix Resurrections, the new one,
Mm.
and I had free tickets. That's why I went. I would never pay money for this because I could kind of tell it was a cynical cash
Mm.
grab. But then when I went, my face was literally like this the whole time, like it was like 2.5 hours of this.
Mm.
It was just such a mess from a storytelling perspective. From
Mhm.
every other perspective, the performances, the special effects, the settings, all that stuff was really, I think it was well done. And
Mm.
so my husband was like, "Oh yeah, seemed fine to me." But I was like, "But what did we like? What do you take away from this?" Like, but there was no message. It was very disjointed. The character development was all over the place. It seems like they wanted to
Mhm.
bring in this new, younger character to be kind of the lead, but then they were like, "Oh, that's not really bankable," so they backed away from that
Mm.
pretty about a fourth of the way in. They were like, "Okay, leave that character aside. Um, she can just be in the background with her girlfriend." Yeah, that makes it LGBTQ friendly, okay, put that over there. And then we'll focus on the bankable Keanu Reeves and the woman who plays Trinity. I don't know what her name is. So I think that you kind of get that weird, oh, sorry. The kettle has been commandeered. So you get this kind of weird, I don't know, the studio influence trying to be like, oh, well, they're bankable stars. We're going to have them be the forefront, but they've already gone through their arc. We've already seen them go from, Neo doesn't know what's going on. He learns what's going on. He finds out he's the chosen one, whatever. And then he accepts the role as chosen one.
Mm.
He's already completed his arc. And there's nothing else to do with him except just keep putting him in random scenes
Mm.
and hope that it makes money because nostalgia. So it
Mm.
was just the worst movie I've ever seen. Honestly, it was so bad. and and I think where it fell flat was just the storytelling and the way that they'd structured the plot. And anyways, that's my rant over. But no one is allowed to like that movie. If you do, you're dead to me. uh, but I do like what Kelly said about Harry Potter's opening chapter makes no sense analyzed against Save the Cat. And I think that's really true as well with a lot of Save the Cat's kind
Mm.
of template, is that a lot of stories do fit it if you kind of retrofit it and you
Mm.
can kind of force things in, and then
Mm.
things won't make any sense at all. So I don't think it is a one size fits all
Yeah.
format. And
Mm.
I think that's what I kind of mean about like the middle stage is like if you're in that robotic following the beat sheet,
Mm.
you'll seem robotic. You'll seem like you're following it. And then if you use the beat sheet, but you're moving to the next stage where you're bopping, but you still have
Mm.
that, I think that that's kind of the ideal space to be in.
Yeah.
But how you get there, I don't know.
I have a bit of my own rant after your Matrix rant. Last
Okay.
night, I there's this show that I watched like 10 years ago, and I just remember it being like really like crazy, especially by the finale. And so I was having my fiance watch it. It's called 0 Hour, and I think I'm the only person that ever saw it. And it's so messy. Nothing makes sense, and there's so many plot holes. And
But is it good, messy, or is it just bad?
I think it's kind of bad, but for some reason it was very gripping to me 10 years ago because it gets crazier as it goes.
Escalate. I haven't
Yeah.
even heard of it, but I'm
Yeah.
also kind of clueless about things until people tell me about it. I don't have my finger on the pulse of pop culture. That's what I'm trying to say.
Uh,
I see Debbie said that she watched the 2021 Dune, which actually looks really good. I'm very interested to see it, and good things she says it's amazing, amazingly different, but so slow. Sí. Gracias. Yeah, I haven't seen it. I also haven't seen the 1984, and I also haven't read the book, so
yeah,
I don't
same.
know.
Yeah.
I have almost nothing to add to the conversation, but I am interested in seeing it, and I think at least how they've done the visuals, it looks really
Yeah, the
interesting.
cinematography is great.
Yeah, so it looks really cool, and I think that's another one in this kind of adaptation pipeline that I'd be really interested to see how it turns out.
Mm.
But I'd also have to read the book. I bought the book actually; it was on sale, just randomly, but it's like a bit of a commitment, and I don't think I'm quite ready to make that commitment. So.
That's kind of the going back to what we were talking about earlier, it's kind of the thing with Save the Cat is it's kind of both this really rigid system, but Jessica kind of leaves room here and there for being more flexible and stuff, which I think is really nice. One of the most interesting parts of the book is towards the end, she actually has an old beat sheet that she wrote out for a story, and then the one that she wrote after it was finished and had been edited and everything to kind of show that, like you were saying, you can kind of pigeonhole those beats after the fact, but as you're writing, like it's not going to be the same. Like things will
Yeah,
change and it'll feel different.
yeah, that's so true. I mentioned before we started streaming that I haven't read the book. I haven't read Save the Cat. I've read a few pieces, and then I've read Jessica Brody's blog. She has a lot of information on it, but it's definitely not the same as reading the book, obviously. So, just to preface all of my opinions, with a little like disclaimer, it's based on having not read the book.
um, Yeah, there was another quote that I really liked in there. When you can resonate with a reader, that's when you become a true storyteller. And I think that's really important way to think about like grounding your story. Even if you're like writing a fantasy, like there's still ways you can really connect with a reader.
Yeah, definitely. Is there an example of a story or character or something that has really resonated with you in the past?
Yeah, that's kind of a hard question because there's so many. uh, um, I know that like when I was growing up, One of my favorite books was The Little White Horse. I loved the vibes there, and this very like prim and proper girl having to deal with all this magical stuff. Um, and I also really loved Sabriel by Garth Nix. Um, I always, I think, really loved stories that were about girls that had magic and were going through struggles and trying to kind of find their place in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I was going to say I have not exactly, I don't think I was ever quite as into the magic necessarily, but I had, when I was younger, I really liked female characters that I could identify with. But,
Yeah.
obviously they were a lot cooler and better at things than me. I just absolutely loved the Tamara Pierce, all
Oh,
of her
yes.
series, all of her work. Yeah. Complete and utterly in love with her world. And I really connected with the characters. And I actually really liked Kel,
Mhm.
I think she didn't have any powers at all.
Mm-mm.
And yeah, and she was just like cool and strong. And so when I'd be like running or playing sports or something, and I'd be feeling really lazy, I would think like, what would Kel do in this scenario?
Uh,
And it was very motivating actually, because I really felt like I want to be like her, I want to emulate
mhm.
her. And then it motivates me to kind of, I don't know, to like, if she could do it, I can do it.
Uh,
I think she also like, she doesn't talk to animals, but she has animal sidekicks. Um,
uh,
but I really found that very, yeah, I really connected with that. And I
mm,
think that I also connected with her arc, because it was like she started, I don't know, she was bullied, or she had all these challenges and then
mm,
overcame them kind of gradually through hard work. So I think that that was really good storytelling, because it, especially for a teenage girl, it was very
mm,
like gripping.
mhm,
Um, and then I think also, yeah, but I was never quite as into the magic, but I could see
mm.
why, especially as a teenager, you could, you know, really get into that and like want
Uh-huh.
that. Yeah, just imagine if you're a teenager and suddenly had a magic power or something. Um,
Yeah, I was so into Tamara Pierce as a kid too. It was one of those things where I would just kind of grab a book from the library and read it. And so I think the only full series of hers that I've read is the one about Kel. I love it so much. I feel like she's such a real girl, even though she's going through all these things that we never would. And I think there's so many things that we can connect to, that struggle of, trying to make our way in a world that kind of is against us in some ways.
yeah, I think I don't want to go too far into the Tamara Pierce saga, because I could probably talk about it for the rest of my life. But when I first started reading the Alana, I think it's
Mhm.
Alana's series. In that series, Alana is, she's awesome. She has purple eyes. Like, she's a bit of a Mary Sue. Like, she's kind of good at everything. And then she dresses up as a boy to become a
Mhm.
knight or whatever. And so I think that that's a little bit more of the traditional fantasy trope. And
Mhm.
then I think that Kel's story was really interesting because she went into training as visibly a girl. And then so she had
Uh-huh.
this adversaries kind of based on that. And then I don't know, it just felt more realistic, I guess, because
Mm.
how many of us are sneaking around like
Yeah.
pretending to be boys. I don't
Yeah.
know. There is like a certain fantasy about that,
Uh,
but that it's not as relatable, I guess. And so that's why I
yeah.
really liked Kel's series,
Uh-huh.
because, and she also didn't have magic, whereas Alana
Mm.
had some special magic. I can't remember what it was
Yeah.
exactly, but she had a special, it was a little bit of the chosen one thing. It was a little bit of the Mary Sue thing, to be honest. But
Uh-huh.
I
That totally
mean,
makes sense.
yeah, but I still love the series, so I'm not trying to criticize it. But like looking back now, I'm like, that was very like Mary Sue written across. It should just be like Mary Sue's Grand Adventure or whatever. Um,
We've got a question
So,
from
yeah,
Kelly.
Kelly's trying to keep us on track. She's like, I don't know, this is going down a different way. So let's steer it back on.
I think that like the template could work for pretty much any story, but I do think that there's some that it works a little bit better for. I think especially the 5-point finale that she talks about is really good for more of an action kind of story, like a fantasy or more of an action movie. I was actually watching a movie the other day, and as the ending was happening, I was like, I bet I know what's going to happen because of the way she lays out the finale, and it hit it beat for beat, with like the false win and then having to regroup and all of that. So I think that especially plays well with that. And then there's the aspect of her focus on the life lesson that gets learned. And I feel like that's especially common in more like middle grade fiction and in some more like literary fiction type works. But I think that there's ways to apply it to anything. I would say the one type of story that I kind of came away confused by in the genre section, one of the genres is the buddy love or romance. And it gets so complicated with the way the A stories and the B stories kind of switch. And I don't feel like we got enough information for that, for how that changes the beat sheet. I don't know. Do you have thoughts?
I mean, I haven't read the book. I just, yeah, I don't think I could be very specific about it. I mean, I think
Yeah.
that there is kind of this format or things. I don't know. I think as I've done a lot more beta reading, I've done more writing, I've done more critiquing. Now, whenever I'm watching a movie or I'm reading a book, I'm constantly thinking about the structure and like what's going to happen. So, like for example, there's also that concept of the planting and payoff, where they plant something. So this, I'm not going to have a tangent about this, I swear, but I was watching Gremlins the other night. And in Gremlins, the main character comes into the house, and when he comes in, a sword like falls off the wall. There's like a sword display on the wall, and it falls over. And he goes and he picks it up, but he's kind of like doing other things. He's talking to his parents, he's doing whatever. And when I saw that, I was like, okay, there's something specific about why they put that sword, like why the sword fell off the wall. And then in the next scene, I think his dad adjusted the sword or something. So I was like, we've seen the sword 2 times. Something is going to happen with this sword. And then sure enough, when the gremlins attack, they take the sword and stab the gremlin with the sword. So, there's things like that where you're watching it and you can kind of predict, why are they showing me this? Or if they show one character's flaw or problem is like, oh, he's a bad dad or whatever, that his arc is going to be how he redeems himself for being a bad dad. So I think the more you study the story structure, the more you start to pick up on it. And I think you get really good at predicting what's going to happen, unless your movie is just a chaotic mess like Matrix Resurrections, where nothing matters. There's no planting. There's no payoff. It's just crap.
I think that's called Chekhov's gun, right? That phenomenon. Yeah.
Yeah, that if you see the thing in the gun on the, if
Yeah.
you see the gun in the first scene, then it has to go off by the end. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that there's these kind of things that the audience is aware that this thing is there, but it's not the focus of their attention. That sort of planting so that you feel the story is moving along in this organic way. It doesn't feel random. Whereas I think some movies like Matrix Resurrections is trying to subvert your expectations, and that they just throw random stuff in and they haven't properly established it or built it up. Kelly says, do you find that distracting or satisfying? You mean that the planting and payoff concept? She's probably typing. Yeah. I mean, I think that for most people who are watching a movie or they're reading a book, they're probably not thinking in this way. At least my husband does not think in this way. And he is always like, oh, stop ruining it. So I think most people don't really notice it. They just kind of subconsciously, it makes more sense to them at an intuitive level. And then they say, I like that thing or I don't like that thing. Whereas when you're critiquing and you're analyzing, I think that you're looking at what is the story structure? How does it fit together? How are they moving these pieces around? And so you're not really looking at, do I like it or do I dislike it? Unfortunately, I wish I could go back to just being like, I like it or I dislike it. But now I just can't read a book without being like, I think the editor probably put this in here. Like, this is very random. This feels like an editor was like, oh, tie this in. And, or, you know, like I can see what they're doing, or I can see that now, or they should be moving on to the next beat, but they're staying too long on this. So that's how I'm thinking. But I don't think the average consumer of this media is thinking in that way. They're just thinking, do I like it or do I not like it? And it's probably at a subconscious level that they're absorbing the structure, they're absorbing these things, but they don't know how to put words to it or analyze it in that way.
Well, I distinctly remember back in college I can't remember if it was during a class or a club I was in that was about, writing and reading critically and all that. But I had this fellow classmate be like, are you able to actually enjoy writing anymore? I mean, reading anymore? Because now that we know all this stuff, like whenever I read, I'm just thinking about all, analyzing every little detail of the book, and I can't really enjoy it anymore. And back then I was like, oh yeah, I still enjoy reading. I don't have that happen. And then the more and more that I've focused my life on analyzing writing and thinking more critically about those elements, now I'm the exact same way. Whenever I read, I just notice those things, and sometimes it pulls me out, sometimes it doesn't. It just kind of depends, but it's always there. And I, like you, I just want to go back to when like I would just like crawl in bed with my book and I could just fall into the world, but now
Yeah,
I've
and
got
just
all that.
like it for what it is and
Yeah.
enjoy it without critically analyzing it. Because, yeah, there's a critical aspect of, oh, they could have done this, they could have done that. And then there's also, I don't know, it does feel like you're dissecting everything,
Uh-huh.
where the characters are no longer like real people. They're more like, what's your arc? You know, you never say that to a human, like your friend. Like, so I see you're having this problem. Let's make it an arc. Like, where's our end goal going to be? Like, that's not how you treat
Uh-huh.
humans. But then in literature, you obviously, if you're writing, if you're critiquing, then you have to look at it in this perspective of like, what's your fatal flaw?
Yeah.
That, you know,
Uh,
why are we empathizing with you? And then where are we going to get to through this story? How are we going to show your fatal flaw? And so, oh, Kelly says she finds it super satisfying to pick apart books. Maybe the odd one out. I wish I would stop doing it, and especially when I'm watching something and I'm like, I know what's going to happen, and then trying to guess why they're putting things
uh-huh.
in. And I don't know. I wish I could just turn it off and just enjoy it, but
Yeah, I would say I think that, like Kelly, sometimes I'm able to enjoy it. I know that like one book that I read in like the past year that I kind of enjoyed pulling apart as I was reading it was Wizard's First Rule by Terry Goodkind. I came at this story having watched Legend of the Seeker and really loving the show adaptation and reading the book. There's so many typos, so many like
typos.
inconsistencies.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
And
Right.
inconsistencies and places where characters could have been better. Like some of them are just so shallow. And there's some really like strange stuff in there that if I was an editor, or I think most book editors probably would have been like, take this out.
Yeah.
So, and for like something that
Makes
was
you
like,
wonder.
yeah, something that was like traditionally published and has been out there for like decades, like the fact that it's that rough is a bit interesting.
Yeah, it shows that anything can happen, that yeah, this world doesn't make any sense. Yeah, I had that happen where I really liked this series, and it's called Knots and Crosses. I don't think it is very popular. It's made by like the BBC. I don't think it made it to the US. But it was really interesting, and it's kind of got this like um, when you're watching the series, it's got this like reverse history thing where instead of Europe colonizing Africa, Africa got powerful and colonized Europe. So it's kind of like this like role reversal. So it's like Europe is a colony of Africa. It's really interesting, and I was like, oh, I have to read this book because it's so interesting. I feel there's so much they could go into this in a book that a series can't do. And then I was reading I read the book, and it was just so shallow. It didn't have typos, but it was pretty much, like the writing was a bit shaky, and it just fell flat. They didn't do anything like with this reverse history type thing. They just literally reversed. They were like, there's racism, but instead of black and white, we just like reverse those, but didn't say anything about anything else. And it was just, I don't know, it was just so like, I don't know, I was really shocked that that was popular enough to make an adaptation, and that the adaptation was so good. But I think that they had kind of this basic idea, and then the adaptation was able to build on it, which I thought was really cool. But I don't recommend reading the book. I recommend watching the series, but I don't recommend the book. But yeah, I don't know why I started talking about that. I think I just wanted to talk about it. It's a good adaptation. It's got Stormzy in it. If you know who Stormzy is, you probably don't. But anyways, it's good.
I've never heard of it. I actually watch a lot of BBC shows.
Oh yeah. Well, if you have access to BBC, I do. I mean, I don't know. It's my taste as well. Like I find that very interesting, and I really like Stormzy. So, but you might like it. It's called Knots, but it's spelled like Noughts. And process. It's what in America is tic-tac-toe, and in UK it's Knots and Crosses, like the game.
Oh, I didn't know that's what they call it.
So,
That's so interesting.
facts.
The only other things that we probably still have to talk about are, and you haven't read the book, but towards the end there's some interesting details about how to use the beats to come up with your synopsis and your blurb, which I think is a really cool thing that you can do. And she talks a little bit about using the beat sheet for like if you're writing a series, which I thought was really interesting. She talks about Hunger Games a lot, which I kind of like because it does actually fit these beats so well. And she kind of says that there's so many of these genres, and each of the Hunger Games books fits in a different genre, so it's kind of that's what's focusing the beat sheet for each of the books, which I thought was really interesting, because otherwise if you're following the beat sheet for each book it could get kind of repetitive. And I guess the other alternative is for like each book to be just a portion of that beat sheet. But it's just kind of interesting to think about how that all works, because the book is mostly, and the beat sheet is mostly focused on like standalone. It kind of has that vibe to it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I didn't realize that she had the help for blurbs and synopsis, but that's obviously really useful because that's such a challenging thing to do. So I may actually, well, if Kelly has it, I may take that from you, Kelly, because I think it would be really nice to, well, any help that I can get is obviously really nice.
Mhm.
And then I think with the blurb and the synopsis, it's for writers, you're so committed to your world and your
Mhm.
whatever you're doing that it's really hard to trim it down just to the plot points. And I
Mhm.
think at the end of the day, that's really what is going to sell the book is the plot points and how
Mhm.
it ties it. It's the arc, but it's the plot points, but it's not really the feeling or your
Mhm.
writing ability or your world building. Like nothing, none of that really matters. What really
Oh.
sells the book is that plot based
Mhm.
hook. So I don't know. I think it would be really interesting to get that
Yeah.
from Kelly. I this is why I should read the book, but then it's this. See, this is also what encourages me to be lazy, is because I'm like, well, yeah, I can just find it somewhere else. I don't need to actually read it.
Um, and the one thing that I kind of left off after reading the book, still wondering about, is how to kind of beat out a short story because like the constraints are different. It's so much shorter. There's so many different types of short stories, but it'd be really interesting to know like if there's a way to kind of break it down in a similar way.
Yeah, that's very true because I find short stories are so different from
Mhm,
writing a full book. And I found that out kind of the hard way when I don't, I guess maybe you weren't involved at this point, but we did for Halloween last year, we
mhm,
did the Tales and Whales competition.
mhm,
And so I did a short story and I was like, oh, well, it's only, 600 words. It should be really easy. And then I did it and I sent it to someone. Uh, we did a swap on short stories and she found all these flaws with it. And I was just like, oh, I'm shocked that there was like this many problems. But I just think
yeah,
it's just such a different format.
it
And
is.
then I just kind of, I don't know, I had to kind of rethink
Mhm,
my approach. And since then, I've been doing more short stories because
mhm,
I think it's really useful to have. And it's also is this like trimming down of things
mhm.
and figuring out how to do something really short and sweet and self-contained, which is really difficult. So I thought it's a really useful skill, even if you're not planning to do short stories forever. I think it's a really good one to master. And it would be nice, yeah, if there was something like Save the Cat for short stories.
Yeah. I wrote some, like, many years ago, and I haven't really done it since, but, it's something that I do wanna work on because, like you said, I think it is a really good skill, and I like Kelly's comment here. "Short stories are the only thing I allow myself to just pants 100%, all vibes, no plot structure."
Yeah.
That's definitely how I wrote short stories back in the day. It would just come to me, and I would just type it out, and yeah, it's all focused on those vibes.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that short stories are good as well because it's not as much commitment.
Hmm.
So when you're writing a book, obviously it's just you're really committing to that concept.
Yeah.
And so I think it's interesting to do the short stories. And I think that we'll do again in the summer. I think we'll do the bookworm cosplay, but I think I'm going to make it more focused on like writing a short story and then you do this like a cosplay costume with it, kind
Okay.
of like the Tales and Whales, because I think it's really fun to do short stories. And then I think it's also for a lot of writers who are kind of, um, I don't know, if you write a whole book, it's also a big commitment to read a
Mhm.
whole book. So
Mhm.
getting people to actually read your
Yeah.
whole book is a challenge. And so I think it might make sense to have some more short stories where you can get your writing out there and you feel that your people are reading it and maybe can give feedback. Um, and then, yeah, and having it as this kind of competition, I think
Yeah.
is fun. So I think we're planning to do it again in July, but I don't really know how to set up. That doesn't, sorry, just random thought.
That sounds like so much fun. And yeah, I think short stories are a good way to kind of grow an audience because people don't have to invest that time in you to kind of try it out.
Yeah, that's so true. Now it's so difficult to choose what book to read. And if I'm going to read a book, I need a really good reason to read
Mhm.
it. And so I'll look at all the reviews and I'll really think about if I want to read it or not, because
Yeah.
and then if I don't like it, I used to be like, even if I don't like it, I'll finish it. Now I'm
Uh,
like, got 20% of the way through, done, because there's just so much out there to read. And
mm,
then on top of writing, on top of beta reading, on top of my work stuff, it's just,
mm,
I spend so much time staring at screens that you have to really give me a good reason to get invested.
mm,
And yeah, and so I think that's kind of the downfall of the novel as we
mm.
know it now, is that it's very long, it's very time
Yeah.
consuming. And I don't know. And then, yeah, like, so I think short stories are a good way to go.
Mm.
And then if you know that you like this person's writing, then you might be willing to invest in the book.
Uh,
Um,
I definitely think it's good for the mental health to DNF sometimes. I was one of those people too who would just push myself through, but a while back I was reading this book that I was given by somebody, and they thought it was a different kind of book, and I ended up hating it. And my fiance kept saying, "Just stop reading it, stop reading it." And I finally did, and I felt so much better about it.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, there's just too much to read in this world. And I know there's also the thing of giving yourself a chance to get into it, because sometimes you're not always gripped by the first page. And that goes back to
Yeah.
what we say is all the pressure on the first page,
Hmm.
on the first chapter. But I don't know. We live in a world of TikToks and and being able to scroll. So there is that, unfortunately, there is that pressure on the first page or the first chapter to grip you and pull you in.
Hmm.
And if it doesn't happen, or if it doesn't happen after a few chapters, then sorry, it's going to be a DNF. And
Yeah.
I don't know. When I was younger, I think I had more time to read as well. So,
Uh,
I was more willing to give things a chance, and I was less critical. Now I'm horrible. I'm just like, oh, your character development is horrible. DNF, It's like,
I still astound myself when I think back to what I was like in middle school and I was reading like 5 books at a time. I cannot do that anymore.
I know.
Uh,
The the dream has died. Yeah. So,
I
yeah.
love this comment, Kelly. This is why buddy reading is so fun. That's true. Nothing like reading a book with other people.
That's true. And also, I try to tell people about the book I'm reading who aren't reading it. Like, my husband's often the target of this, and he's just like,
Uh,
I don't know how to tell you this, but I really don't care. He also doesn't really like fantasy. He's more in
oh,
like a
uh,
politics type guy.
mm.
So he likes football. So it's like me sitting down to watch football with him, and I'm just like,
The eyes glaze over and
I enter like a fugue state when I'm done with the match. He's like, "Didn't you see the play?" I'm like, "I don't even remember the score." My eyes were pointed at the
uh,
screen the whole time, I swear. I saw green. I saw the ball moving around, but I can't remember anything that happened. Just lost an hour and a half of my life that I can't get back. So,
yeah.
he just, I really doesn't care. So I think that's why it's nice to have writer friends who care and who also are taking the more critical approach, because
Mhm.
I think it's easy to, you can say with your friends, oh, I liked this, I didn't like that. That's kind of fine. But when you're taking that critical approach, I don't know, it's good to have someone that you can really dive into the details, and they're not sitting there looking at you like, why do you care?
Yeah, for sure. And then next up on the club, we'll be reading Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. So that's going to carry us through March and May. Give us a little bit of extra time to get through it. It's a very long book.
Yes, and I think I think there's a low chance of me reading it. so so we'll also be talking broader about fantasy, like
Yes.
through the lens of Eye of the World. So people who are or have
Mm.
read Eye of the World can get their Eye of the World
Mm.
fix. And then for people who are lazy
It's just a beast. It's so long, I understand. But yeah, it's so
Yeah.
similar to other classic fantasy that it'll be easy to really talk about the genre in general.
Yeah, I think it'll be a good kind of starting off point for talking about fantasy. And now that I actually mentioned it, I might have read it like in high school.
Oh,
But obviously that has been a long time, so I have to actually see if I've read it or not. And I probably won't have remember most of it, but I think it will be a good lens for looking at fantasy and looking at different tropes. And
mm,
yeah, and there will be something for people who've read it and people who have not.
yeah, I think so. And with the show coming out, I think a lot of people have watched that even if they haven't read the book.
Yeah, exactly. So there's also the show. Has it come out yet, or is it?
It's come out. I saw the first few episodes and then I kind of stopped watching because I was having trouble getting attached to the characters. So I was like, I want to read the book and see if that changes things. And so far, I'm liking the book better.
Okay. Yeah, I have seen it advertised, but I haven't
Yeah.
seen it, and I don't think that I will. I just it's just a bit of with those really big epic
Mm.
fantasy stories. I don't know, it's really hard. It's a tough sell for
Uh,
me to get into it. And yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see. I'm already making my excuses for myself, and I haven't not done the thing yet. But I know that I'm not going to do the thing, and I'll make excuses later.
I love classic fantasy, but there is something about kind of plotting through it sometimes where like I grew up watching the Lord of the Rings movies and I've seen them so many times. I adore them, but I've tried to read the trilogy and it's just kind of a slog trying to get through it because there's so many details that are not really necessary and it
And the
just kind
writing
of slow.
style is very
Yeah.
yeah. I read it when the films came out. I was really into it, and I think this was more high school ages where we're well, you just have more time in high
Mhm.
school, I guess, and when you're in middle school or whatever. Um, so I don't know, but I see what you mean about it being a bit dry.
Mm.
And I would not read it now. And I don't think I would even really rewatch the series, to be honest. I
Mm.
think it would be a tough sell for me to watch the
Yeah.
series.
Kelly mentioned reading the book and watching the movie. That's a good idea. I kind of want to do that with Persuasion. I think it'd be fun to talk about the adaptation. I haven't seen the older one, I don't think. Maybe I have a long time ago, but I've seen the newer one several times. And they're making another adaptation of that. So, and we could also talk about Wheel of Time when we talk about Eye of the World too. Some.
Yeah, oh, that's true. Yeah. I was also thinking it would be fun to do this with like a middle grade book. You know, like Artemis Fowl. Do you remember? I don't. I think I read it.
I
It's
never
middle
read
grade.
it and I
It's
haven't
worth a
watched it.
way
I think it's middle grade, yeah.
because I think that could be really one easy to read, and then
Mhm.
two, it could be fun to watch. I don't think that it got good reviews, but it could also be good to hate watch or have a laugh while watching.
Yeah. I think they
But we could
changed a lot from
also
what I heard secondhand.
yeah, so that could be something as well that's a bit shorter. And oh yeah, Kelly says, "Is there a new Artemis Fowl movie coming out?" I have not followed the series at all. I think that there was this
Mm,
first one that was not well received, or at least there was a lot of backlash, or you know, people kind of clowning on it.
mm,
Um, and then I don't know. I don't know. I'm
mm.
my finger is not on the pulse of pop culture, but we could do something that's like a shorter one that would be more fun, um,
Well,
rather than a really dense series.
I was kind of thinking about, when, Percy Jackson comes out, doing that one because I love the series. I've read a lot of Rick Riordan's books, and,
Mhm.
I've I think I saw the movie before I read the books. I liked the movie when I saw it, and then I read the books, and like it pales in comparison. So I kind of see them separately. And I'm really interested to see what they do with the new series now that Rick's actually involved.
Oh, okay. I didn't know they were making a reboot of it.
Yeah.
I never read the books, and
Mm.
I think I saw the film first, and I think that kind of put me off of it
Mm.
because the way they made it was in this very Disney style. I don't know, it felt very surface level. Um, yeah, I think that's a really good. I guess that's Percy Jackson. What's the O?
The Olympians.
Oh, okay. Don't know what I'm talking about. Yeah, I think that would be good. Well, I think it'd be good to have Kelly as a guest
Yeah.
as well.
It'd be
We do,
great to talk to somebody who has also read the books and is obsessed. I love it so
yeah,
much.
yeah. I think that could be a really good one, and I think also, but then we won't have anyone in the audience except us. No, we have Debbie. We have Debbie, and we have the bots.
Uh,
Oh, and I could be in the audience heckling. What do you mean? Yeah. So, anyways, I guess our hour is up. I think it
yeah,
went okay considering it was our first time doing a discussion, and it seems
yeah.
like we had lots of things to talk about, even though some people didn't read the book.
The fact that you're able to talk about it so much is
Have such
impressive.
strong opinions about something I've never read. I think that's you have the strongest opinions about something that you don't actually know about.
Well,
Talked
it
about
was
life.
good chatting with you.
Yeah, thanks, and thanks to Debbie and Kelly for joining us. I don't know if Debbie's still around.
And yeah, Kelly, this should show up on YouTube after we're done here.
Oh, it will. Oh no. Okay. All right. Let's say goodbye then.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us.
Okay. Bye, everyone, and
Bye.
see you next time. Bye.